So now we are going next in our program. It's our prominent lecturer, Dr. Voeikov, who is present on all the congresses of Science Information Spirit since the beginning, I think, or maybe 20, more than 20 congresses he has been at. And this is not an exception. Again, he is here. Well, unfortunately, he was not able to be presenting live. So he has shared the video presentation with us, pre-recorded. So I will just switch it on for you and we will watch it together.
Dear colleagues, it is my great pleasure to participate in this most interesting and innovative lecture course, which is devoted to the key essence of life, flow of energy and information exchange, processing and accumulation in living nature. I'm very thankful to the organizers of this conference, Dr. Christian Bordas and Professor Konstantin Korotkov, my dear friends, who invited me to present a lecture devoted to the emerging new science of water. All three of us understand very well that water is the major material foundation of both energy exchange and information processing. It is a material foundation of life, life itself. This, in fact, is a very, very old idea. More than 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, the founder of the European philosopher, Thales of Milet, proclaimed that life is the principle of all things. All things are created from water, and all things are returned to water. This wasn't just a proclamation. Thales was not satisfied by the approach to nature of his time, where all things were considered to be not connected to each other regularly, but only according to the will of gods. And he believed that nature is unity, and that there should be some unifying principle which glues, so to say, all the things in nature, which makes them to move or accumulate and exchange energy and information. And he came to conclusion that this principle should be materialized, and that the material foundation of this principle should be water. So, according to him, water is the material entity unifying all pieces of nature. Paying attention to continuous water movement in nature, he came to the conclusion that water itself is the source of movement in nature. It is moving from its own intrinsic property. Since he observed that no living things can live without water, and that they consist mostly of water, he also claimed that water is the source and essence of life. And as water is material entity unifying all nature, water should be also the source and essence of intelligence. His ideas, his principles seemed to be too brave even at his time. And after they were proclaimed in some centuries, the interest to water fled, and then it faded. And by the way, by the 20th century, studies of the paradoxical water properties, studies of the unifying water properties were considered to be unscientific. However, with the becoming of the new century and of the new millennium, we approach to the age of aquariums. And when the age of Aquarius came, and new information about water begin to accumulate very rapidly. And I would say that it turns out that Tales of Millet was in most of his claims right. So 2,500 years later, after the ideas, after the theory of Tales of Miletus, it was scientifically proved that water is the third most abundant substance in the universe. Due to the miraculous technique devised by human beings, it was shown that water, for example, around only one quasar may fill 150 trillion of Earth oceans. And water was discovered, the abundance of water was discovered in many places where the new planets are formed. And how much water is in our solar system? Is it only here on this blue planet in our solar system on which we live, on Earth? As a matter of fact, 50 or even 30 years ago, most people believed, most scientists and people who listen to scientists, they believed that Earth is a very unique planet, and water, liquid water, contains is present only on Earth. Or there are ice satellites, ice meteorites, but liquid water is just the destiny of the planet on which we live. And at the age of Aquarius, it became clear during the last couple of decades, or even the last 10 years, that our planetary system is really wet as universe itself. Here at this picture, one can see that such satellites of Jupiter, satellite Europa, small planets, or satellite of Saturn, Titan, there are oceans of liquid water. And these pictures show the proportion of water to the mass of the whole planet. One can see that, for example, quantity of water in the ocean on Titan exceeds several times quantity of water in the Earth ocean, with which with which our Earth is covered. Though there are now some data which shows that quantity of water inside the Earth may be many times more than in the oceans. That we know about, for example, Titan and Europa, something even more than we know about the depth of our planet. So how can it be that these oceans are on these planets and they do not evaporate, for example? Of course, these planets are covered with a thick layer of ice, of solid water. And this thick layer of ice, it preserves liquid water, liquid ocean from freezing and from evaporation. There is a third satellite, which is called Enceladus. And here is the diagram which shows the model of Enceladus containing also a very, very deep ocean, 65 kilometers of ocean on this Enceladus, the satellite of also Saturn, covered with 5-kilometer layer of ice. And from this layer of ice, for millions of years, geysers evaporate, throw water into space. And surprisingly, or miraculously, this ocean doesn't become smaller. Why I show you this picture of Enceladus? Because only 2 or 3 years ago, it was discovered that Enceladus may contain protolife. Because it was published in the one of the most important scientific journals, Nature, that in the depth of Enceladus there were found macromolecular organic compounds. And when we are talking about macromolecular organic compounds, they may be the precursors of proteins, lipids, and even nucleic acids. So the research goes on, but already we have some indication that life, Earth is not the only cradle of life in our planetary system, in solar system. Very probably similar or different forms of life may exist in such places of which we never could expect 2, 3 decades ago. Okay, it is a very, astrobiology is a very interesting and very rapidly developed piece of science of water. But we are much more interested in our, what we in our relation to water. So let's look at water in human body. I think that everybody knows that water is the major material substance of any living things of our body. Adult man, adult woman, their body contains about 60% of water. And much less, that's 40% or even less, may belong to other substances in which the molecular biology is much more interested, to proteins, nucleic acids, fats or lipids, minerals, etc. But look that these contents, this quantity of water in human body is not a fixed figure. When we were younger, our body contained much more water. Newborn body, the body of newborn contains 80% of water, and the body of fetus, which is already a living thing, contains more than 90% of water. And as we age, as we go to the senior stage of our life, we lose this body from this water from our body. So if to look at this funny diagram, one can see that when we were young, when we were energetic, when we were absorbing with great thirst of information from outside, we had much more water in our body than when we became older and older. Already, this is some kind of indication that water is somehow connected to energy, because of course, new body and toddler is much more energetic than senior people, and it is much more connected to, it is also connected to information. Okay, but I'm talking now about water in quantities of mass. That is the ratio of how much water in liters to different other substances in our body in kilograms. If to look at this proportion from the chemical point of view, we would see that water molecules constitute 99% of all molecules and ions in practically any part of the body of any living being. And being a biologist, I cannot stand to show you that there are such animals, such living things, which are practically pure water. There is some people often ask me, does living water exist? And I answer them that they know that they exist. They even could probably held this living water in their own hands. Let's look at such a hydroid as jellyfish. Some jellyfishes contain 99 or even more water by mass. And all the solids of which this molecular biology is interested so much, proteins, nucleic acids, and other organic and inorganic compounds constitute less than 1% of the mass of jellyfish. And this jellyfish swims, it inhabits, it exists in water which surrounds it. And it turns out that water in which jellyfishes live is much more, so to say, dirty than water of jellyfish itself. Seawater, this typical seawater, contains more than 3% of salts by weight. So contents of water in seawater is much less than contents of water in jellyfish. One can say in principle that jellyfish is very, very pure water, which has only some inclusions of our substances in this water. But of course, everybody understands that if we evaporate this water, if we purify water of jellyfish from these solids, which constitute less than 1% of its mass, then this water converts into distilled, not living water at all. So this is just the example of water in a living thing. Now, we here already see that there may be two different kinds of water. This is water and this is water, and they somehow do not dissolve in each other. They can coexist, they can live together. And this is one of the very interesting property of water, which is one of the enigmas of water. And though water is the most abundant substance and is supposed to be a collection of seemingly simple molecules, H2O, here is just the model of such molecular, two hydrogen atoms connected to an oxygen atom. It is in fact the most enigmatic entity, the most enigmatic compound of all other compounds which we know. The British physical chemist, Professor Martin Chaplin, he wrote or collected an encyclopedia of modern knowledge about water in the internet, which is called Water Structure and Behavior. And on one of the thousands of pages of this encyclopedia of water, he collected 63 anomalies of water. Here is the illustration of anomalies of water which are revealed when we study temperature dependence of different properties of water, like density, viscosity, compressibility, speed of sound, and so on. Why this behavior of water dependent on temperature is considered to be anomalous? Though, as I said, water is the most common compound in nature, because this behavior is unexpected from our what we call laws of physics and chemistry. Basing on these laws of physics and chemistry, which accumulated which were discovered, I would say, in 19th century, one should expect that different properties of water should change monotonously with temperature increase or with temperature decrease. and for some other properties of water, such as, for example, specific heat of water is very high at very low temperatures, then it decreases, then it goes to the minimum parameter, as a matter of fact, at 37 degrees centigrade, and then with increase of temperature, this specific heat also begins to increase. Is it coincidence that 36 degrees is the minimum of specific heat of water, and this is the temperature of the warm-bodied animals? I don't think that this is a coincidence, but nobody now can exactly explain why the warm why animals have this temperature of their body. Okay, we of course will not discuss all these 63 anomalies of water. Let us look at some of them which may be most common and most interesting for us. First, anomaly of water. Water is the only substance that exists on Earth in three aggregate states. Well, we can see around us, always can see gaseous water, or which is vapor, or clouds. We very often, and we cannot live without liquid water. This is another aggregate state of water. And we often meet solid water, snow and ice. All other substances exist on Earth either in two or in one aggregate state. They may be solid, and they may be, we can see solid substances, we can see gaseous substances, but there are no substances which exist on Earth in three aggregate states. Why it is the anomaly for water? Because if to look at water as an other, as a representative of the family of hydrogen containing compounds, then the most close relative of water, hydrogen sulfide, H2S, compared to H2O, becomes evaporates at temperature below 50 degrees centigrade, and it freezes at temperature a little above minus 100 degrees centigrade. And if to extrapolate the properties of all hydrates which we know to water, we should expect that water should melt at the temperatures 100, nearly 100 degrees. It's nearly minus 80 degrees, and it should freeze at temperatures minus 100 degrees. So at temperatures which is common to Earth, water should also be in gaseous form. If we look at such a hypothetical situation, then there should be no liquid and solid water on Earth. It should be like H2S, gaseous form. And as we know, the temperature of water freezing is 0 degrees, and temperature of water boiling is 100 degrees centigrade. Another most famous water anomaly is density paradox. If we take any substance, then it has lowest density in a gaseous form. On conversion to liquid form, its density increases, and it continues to increase on cooling. In a solid form, any substance has the highest density. Water is different from all other substances. It has the highest density in a liquid form, and specifically at 4 degrees centigrade. On this plot, the dependence on temperature of a value reciprocal to density, that is, of specific volume of water. A specific volume of water is illustrated. So the lowest point on this graph corresponds to the highest density and the highest point to the lowest density. Thus, as we cool warm water, its density first increases, as it is expected for any other substance. But when we reach 4 degrees centigrade and continue to cool water, then below this temperature, density of water starts to decrease. When we reach 0 degrees centigrade and water freezes, the discontinuity in its density is observed. The density of ice drops abruptly, or on this reciprocal plot, the specific volume increases. That means that ice will always float on water, on liquid water. If to imagine that water behaves as other, so to say, normal substances, and ice is more dense than liquid water, then ice should sink in water. In this case, all water reservoirs, rivers, lakes, oceans will freeze if temperature stays below 0 degrees long enough. Water density paradox allows water to stay liquid in deep enough reservoirs under the ice that covers water surface and protects water from freezing. Thus, living organisms inhabiting water may stay alive even at very low ambient temperatures. So density paradox saves life. And I remind you that on Enceladus, on Titan, on Europe, liquid water is covered with a very thick layer of ice. On these small planets, oceans of liquid water exist in cosmic frost long enough to provide conditions for the emergence of organic compounds and probably even of living things in it. Now, let us discuss other anomalies or paradoxical properties of water. Paradoxical properties of water. Our customary feeling about already not liquid but gaseous water, vapor. What can be softer than clouds? But if we think a little, a little deeper, then we recollect that atmospheric water in the form of tornadoes may be stronger than steel. They may be stronger than concrete. Tornadoes can break down buildings which seem to be very, very strong, which should not be broken down by vapor, in fact, but in this form, in this dynamic form of tornado, gaseous water becomes very, very strong. Another property, also anomalous of water, that atmospheric water, that is gaseous water, is the source of electricity and tremendous quantity of electricity. Each second there are hundreds, thousands of thunderstorms on Earth and tremendous quantity of electrons in the form of blasts are released by these thunderstorm clouds. And the question is how water molecules which are neutral can release so much electricity into the environment. I would say that the answers to these questions are not given in a conclusive form, that the meteorologists, in fact, do not know exactly the mechanism of formation of tornadoes, the mechanism of the appearance of electricity, of blasts from thunderstorm clouds, and even there is no good explanation about the formation of clouds themselves. Now I'll try to show you another paradox of water, which is not so well known as paradoxes which we discussed just now. Common knowledge: water extinguishes a fire. But as it was first demonstrated more than 200 years ago, or at least it was expected more than 200 years ago, and it was demonstrated experimentally, water is a fuel. Water may burn. American inventor John Kansas in 2007, he made such an experiment. He took salt water from the ocean, put it into a test tube, and begin to irradiate this test tube with salt sea water with radio waves of not too high intensity, 200, 400 watts. The thing is that radio waves are the low density energy. They have a very long, very low frequency, and one should not expect that they could produce some effect on water. But the miracle happened when seawater was under the action of these radio waves, and the spark, and you could take a match or a spark, and water begin to burn. So the temperature of this flame was as high as 1,500 degrees. So what is water burning? It is burning of of any other fuel. Burning is such hot burning is the combining of hydrogen atoms to oxygen atom. That means that radio waves under these conditions could split water into constituent atoms, into hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms. And hydrogen atoms released from water could combine with oxygen atoms if there was energy of activation, and could give such a hot flame. And so water was burning until it completely disappeared and only salt was left in this test tube. As a matter of fact, if you took pure water, distilled water, or water with a very low contents of salt, you couldn't inflame this water. This water couldn't be split under these conditions. So water is not only anomalous, it is really enigmatic. Enigmatic because it can behave like water which extinguishes fire, and water can behave like a fuel, like a food for fire. Water may be as soft as clouds, and water may be as strong as tornado in one and the same gaseous state. Water may be so light as ice and so heavy as liquid water. Why water is so enigmatic? One of the answers to this question also begin to originate in this 21st century. It was proved during the last 2 decades that real water, even most pure water, is never a homogeneous liquid. It is always a multi-phase dynamic system. In particular, any water contains two forms of water: interfacial water and bulk water. What we mean by interfacial water? Interfacial water is water which wets hydrophilic surfaces. Let's return to a picture which I have already shown you before. These two forms of water which coexist: jellyfish, very, very pure water, which is not dissolved in a little more dirty sea water. Here we have 99% of water, here we have 97% of water, and they do not mix with each other. jellyfish doesn't dissolve in this water. Of course, water molecules exchange between water of jellyfish and water of sea. Molecules may go from here to here, but substituted by molecules from sea to jellyfish. And but still, these two waters which do not mix with each other. That means that these are two forms of water. Jellyfish water is mostly interfacial water because this 1% of solids, or even less 1% of solids, these are molecules which are very, very strongly hydrated. This is gel molecules. And these gel molecules convert water into something which is so different from bulk water of the ocean. And one of the scientists who decided to study what is the difference between the jelly water and liquid water or bulk water is Professor Jerry Pollack. He is the leader in this field, of studies of water, who shows that water is a very complex and very dynamic system, and that many enigmas, many paradoxical properties of water may be explained by these non-mixing parts of water. He discovered the water which he called exclusion water. That is water which hydrates, which wets hydrophilic surfaces. And he decided that this is a new aggregate state of water beyond solid, liquid, and vapor. Several years ago, he published a volume in which he collected all his discoveries and discoveries of other scientists who also prove that water is a very, really complex system. And I recommend you very much to find this book and read it. It is brilliant. It is a piece of art, not only a very exceptional science. Okay, so how he discovered the presence of this fourth phase of water, which he called exclusion zone water. If to take a piece of gel, here is on this picture, here is to the left is a gel, hydrogel, for example, polyvinyl acetate gel, which contains a lot of water, and put this gel into water, into suspension of particles, which may be called microspheres, which are easily suspended in the water, then one can see that with time and very short period of time, these microspheres are expelled from the gel surface. And they expelled to rather macroscopic, I would say, the distances. For example, here is after 5 minutes of standing water near together with this gel, about 50 microns of water near the surface of this gel are practically completely free of these microspheres. As a matter of fact, this layer of water, which forms near the hydrophilic surface, this layer of water expels also proteins, it expels also dust, it expels also even low molecular weight compounds like dye compounds. For example, if you take water colored with some low molecular weight dye, then you have here clear of this dye water. Other surfaces and under other conditions, this layer of water which expels everything from itself may reach such dimensions and as hundreds of microns or fractions of millimeters. For example, with the naked eye, one can see this thick layer of water, which Jerry Pollack called exclusion zone water. So here is water which suspends, which dissolves different substances, and here is water which doesn't dissolve, which expels from it. This water behaves like ice, because when you freeze water and ice forms from the crystal structure of ice, all particles which do not fit into his crystalline structure also are expelled. So in such a way, this discovery of this exclusion zone water, or water interfacial water with very special properties, was done. And so in water adjacent to hydrophilic surfaces, which we called interfacial water, and now we call them exclusion zone water, is different from bulk water in majority of physical. I'm sorry for this jumping of pictures. In majority of physical and chemical properties. What are hydrophilic surfaces? These surfaces are very common in nature. These are surfaces of most of minerals. These are surfaces of nanoparticles, of dust, of soil, and so on. These are surfaces of biopolymers and their supramolecular complexes. These are cell surfaces. All of them are hydrated with water, and near all of them, this interfacial or easy water forms. So this interfacial water, which Jerry Pollack considers to be the fourth phase state of water, is a liquid crystalline, quasi-polymeric, and coherent water. While water, as we know it, which is always in contact with this easy water, it is an ordinary and quasi-chaotic water. These two waters differ in very, very many properties, but we shall pay most of our attention to one very important for energy and information properties of water, this difference between interfacial or easy water and bulk water. One of the most important properties of interfacial or easy water for bioenergetics is that electrons in interfacial water are in an excited state. This water is in most cases charged negatively. That means it contains quasi-free electrons. While bulk water with which contacts with this easy water contains excess of protons, and it is positively charged. So there is a difference in charge between these two forms of water. Interfacial water may be considered as a negative pole of the battery, and bulk water with which it contacts may be considered as positive, as anode, positive electrode of the battery. Bulk water is a solvent, unlike easy water, exchange water. And one of the solutes in this bulk water will be oxygen. But before I go to oxygen, I would like to show that the charge difference, the potential difference between easy water and bulk water may reach 150 millivolts, or fraction of a volt. And as a matter of fact, recently Pollack and his colleagues they defended a patent which allows to extract electrical power from this system, which contains easy water and bulk water. Of course, it's not a lot of energy, but still it can be used to charge, for example, your smartphone. What was discovered here? It was discovered that when you have hydrophilic surface with which water contacts, and water practically always contacts with some hydrophilic surfaces, there is charge separation between these two waters. But in order to have charge separation and to separate charges into two portions, one need to get from there some energy, because charge tend to neutralize each other. And here they are separated. In order to build an electrical battery, you need from somehow to get enough energy to charge this battery. And the second discovery, which was made by Pollack and his colleagues, is that radiation, especially light in infrared part of the spectrum or ambient light, increases electron donating capacity of interfacial water. So when you have a system, a hydrophilic surface, water, and infrared light or any other light, in fact, simply this is most efficient ambient warmth, then this formation of easy water and separation of charges takes place in this system. Okay, if we have this system and interfacial easy water, which has quasi-free electrons, that means that it has reducing properties because electrons are reducers of something. And in bulk water, we have some oxidizers, and one of the most common oxidizer is oxygen, which, as a matter of fact, it can appears in a free form when water is split into hydrogen and oxygen. Then, in principle, these electrons may combine with this oxygen, and this is a reaction of burning. So this is the reaction of water burning. Water gives electrons to oxygen and converts, there are several intermediate stages in this reaction, and converts into liquid water. But when we have burning, we have energy release. So burning of water, as burning of any other fuel, gives us energy. So the reaction may be, the overall reaction may be written like this: two water molecules which belong to easy water plus oxygen molecular, they combine with each other, and we have oxygen molecular, which originates from water molecules, and we have two water molecules which originate from reduced oxygen molecule. This is a unique property of water, another unique property of water. There is no any other substance which can be oxidized, and the properties, the products of oxidation of this substance are the same as reagents which were taken into the reaction. So the unique property of water is that the products of its oxidation with oxygen or burning are again water molecules, and oxygen. So structured water burning, water plus oxygen gives us oxygen plus water plus energy. Is a perpetuum mobile in a sense? No, and where from energy is coming? It comes in this system. Free energy or energy of burning is released due to increase in entropy. This original system in the initial state is a composition of quasi-crystalline, so highly organized water, and small and chaotic bulk water. When quasi-crystalline water burns, it converts into chaotic water, and entropy of the system increases. When entropy of the system increases, in this particular case, this increase in entropy is followed by energy release. But what water burnt And bulk water cannot burn already because its entropy is high already. So if water burned, then we cannot extract more energy from this water. And now we return to, so water may burn. I show you the already experimental example of this water burning. And how can this water again convert into fuel? And I remind you that another discovery which was made by Jerry Pollack is that radiation, especially light in the infrared part of the spectrum, warmth, promotes regeneration of structural water from disorganized water molecules. Water is always under the action of the infrared radiation. Everything is under the action of infrared radiation. One cannot shield this electromagnetic part of the spectrum from any substances. We can only decrease the intensity of infrared radiation when we make environment cooler, and very cold. But when we make environment colder than 0 degrees centigrade, then water freezes, and all these phenomena, all these effects, of course, disappear. So in order to have liquid water, we need already to have enough intensity of infrared radiation. And when we have infrared radiation of this intensity, then structured water burning, conversion of organized water into disorganized water, is followed by recovery from disorganized water back to organized exclusion zone water due to imbibed always presence of infrared radiation. So that means that water cycle can, in principle, take place everywhere in nature when we have temperature high enough to convert water from ice to liquid. So this property of water allows to restore initial high free energy rich state of aqueous system. But in order to set fire on water, in order to put fire on any fuel, you need to have some catalysts, or you need to have some external impulses. For example, if you take this seawater, it doesn't burn just immediately. You need to irradiate it with radio waves. You may convert water into fuel, which easily burns, even by mechanical treatment of water, which also splits water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. And now there is a great research program to find which catalysts which you can add to water would allow splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen in order to get hydrogen from water, and hydrogen is considered to be the most pure and most efficient fuel of the future. So in Japan especially, many laboratories work on the synthesis of such catalysts. Though there is one catalyst which is always present in water, and spontaneous water oxidation, burning, which occurs in the presence of catalysts, which now is shown in many experimental systems, takes place even in nature, because ubiquitous natural catalysts of water burning are bicarbonates and carbonates. So there is no real natural water without bicarbonates and carbonates. CO2 is always with us. We can get rid from bicarbonate by using very sophisticated and tedious methods of water purification. But as soon as you purified water, make a distilled water or so-called molecule water and put it on air, and especially if you are close to this water, immediately this water will absorb carbon dioxide from the environment, and this carbon dioxide will convert into water into carbonic acid, and if you have cations such as the alkaline cations such as sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, then you have conversion of this carbonic acid into bicarbonate. And it turns out that these bicarbonates can be the natural catalyst of water burning. As a matter of fact, when we, especially in our laboratory, came to this conclusion about 15 years ago, we also paid attention to very well-known property of common baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, which is universal remedy. As a matter of fact, I think that you know it is mostly the area of alternative, not conventional medicine, to use baking soda for treatment or prevention or prophylactics of many diseases. Usually, medical doctors consider that baking soda are such a universal remedy because it improves acid alkaline equilibrium of liquids in our body. This, of course, is the case. But what is acid alkaline equilibrium? From one point of view, it is equilibrium between protons or hydronium ions, H plus, and hydroxyl ions, HO minus. And neutral situation is when there is equal quantity of H plus and OH minus in the liquid. So when we have acidification, this is the symptom or probably even the reason of very many chronic diseases. So our body should be a little alkaline, about 7.6 pH should be well at least higher than 7. And this alkalinity in the body is given by bicarbonate ions, is provided by bicarbonate ions. But on the other hand, what is the acidic environment? This is an environment where you have excess of protons and deficiency of electrons. And what is alkaline? It is excess of electrons over the protons. And when you have excess of electrons, then these electrons can be used for oxygen reduction. So that is, in fact, one of the forms of burning. If you have no enough electrons, burning fades in water and in our organism. If you have excess of electrons, burning is fled. Probably this is one of the most important properties of bicarbonate or baking soda for our well-being. Indeed, we have shown that if you take a bicarbonate solution and add to it a small quantity of active oxygen in the form of hydrogen peroxide, very small quantity of hydrogen peroxide, then this bicarbonate solution begin to burn, in a sense that it begin to emit photons, and this long-term water burning in the presence of I'm sorry. I'm sorry. In the presence of active oxygen, can proceed for many months, even in complete darkness, and even when this vessel with this bicarbonate solution is hermetically closed from the environment. Here we performed hundreds of experiments with these bicarbonate solutions where the concentration of bicarbonate is like in ordinary normal drinking water. And here is the example of such an experiment. When you take only 1 milliliter of bicarbonate solution, which is activated with hydrogen peroxide, and add to this solution a fluorescent molecule which increases the intensity of photon emission from this bicarbonate solution, one can see that initially this solution begins to flare. There is a great increase in photon emission. Here's the scale is photon emission in intensity, which is recorded with the photomultiplier. And the photon emission becomes higher than background emission several thousand times, and this high level of emission lasts for a couple of months. Then it falls down, but not to zero. And for several other months, it stays at the intermediate level. Then again, it goes down, but still it doesn't fade completely. And from March 2008 to January 2010, this test tube with the hermetically closed bicarbonate solution activated with 0.05% of hydrogen peroxide is burning. So that means that bicarbonate solution is a burning aqueous system. What is in fact is burning? It cannot be bicarbonate. It cannot be hydrogen peroxide. Their quantity is so small, 5 millimolar of sodium bicarbonate and 0.05% of hydrogen peroxide. What is abundant here? Of course, water. And this process of which I demonstrated you before, that is easy water, which appears and which is which reduces oxygen, and then due to the environmental infrared radiation, easy water recovers, and again it is burnt, and these properties go practically without ending. So this experiment shows that water around us, which is always bicarbonate solution, and hydrogen peroxide in very small quantities, sometimes high quantities, also is always present in the environmental waters, that this water is really burning. This burning water turns out that it is very sensitive to very faint environmental influences. We could see that such burning water reacts very strongly to geomagnetic storms, to solar and moon eclipses, and to some other variations of electromagnetic fields in our environment. So that is already some kind of information processing. Now, practically all waters which we need for our survival, and we need a lot of water for our survival. The just ordinary person should drink no less than 2 and better 4 liters of water a day in order to stay in a good health. But the question is what is good drinking water? And Konstantin and Christian asked me also to tell you some my knowledge about the properties of water which we should drink. From what I told you, of course, normal drinking water, regular drinking water, it should be bicarbonate water, water which contains bicarbonate. So since bicarbonate aqueous system serve a permanent source of free energy, of photons, sparks, and they revitalize aerobic respiration and energy production in our organism, because our water in our organism, we can suppose it also burns. We should drink bicarbonate natural waters. So these bicarbonate natural waters, of course, they have different activities. They have different properties. So these waters, in the first place, better that should be natural, or they may be artificially activated bicarbonate. And this artificially activated bicarbonates water may be artificially activated with magnetic fields, like, as I told you, natural magnetic or geomagnetic storms may activate bicarbonate aqueous systems. So these best drinking waters are activated bicarbonate natural waters. So better not to drink very soft waters. I can tell you that the best drinking water should contain at least half a gram of bicarbonate per liter. There were scientific research devoted to the studies of beneficial effect of mineral bicarbonate water. This research scientific research started already in 19th century. And there are many papers devoted to studies of the beneficial, prophylactic, or healing effects of bicarbonate mineral waters. And here I give you a very small extract of very recent papers, which show that bicarbonate waters have beneficial effects on our health. Consumption of bicarbonate-rich mineral water prevents or improves type 2 diabetes. So this paper was published in Evidence-Based Complementary Alternative Medicine Journal in 2015. Another example, reduction of cardiovascular risk by sodium bicarbonated mineral water in moderately hypercholesteremic young adults. Of course, bicarbonate waters do not substitute for all other medicine, for physical activity, for all other forms of health way of life. But without them, there is no health way of life. And here is the very recent review. Is there a modulation role by mineral water consumption on metabolic syndrome features? Now, this metabolic syndrome is considered to be the essence of all chronic diseases. Starting from heart, cardiovascular diseases, the endocrine diseases like diabetes, and even to cancer. And so the authors of this review of many papers of the 2019, they come to the conclusion that ingestion of mineral waters might be beneficial upon blood pressure regulation when a dysfunction of metabolism exists. The same applies for lipid profile and glucose homeostasis. Now, as you know, of course, there are not only drinking waters, but there are medicinal mineral waters which help which may help you when already you have some problems with your health. And I would like to name only two waters, which from my point of view are universal medicinal mineral waters, which contain a lot of bicarbonate, and not only bicarbonate, but also a very important cation, without which activates water, bicarbonate water, much more than in normal drinking waters they have. This on the first place is given to Donat Magnesium from Slovakia. You may find this water in internet. That's strange. It is not very well known water, though the sanatoriums, the spas based on this on the springs with this water were first appeared in Slovakia in 19th century. So this water contains 7.7 grams of bicarbonate per liter and 1 gram of magnesium per liter. If you combine such quantity of bicarbonate and magnesium in distilled water, you'll immediately have the deposit. But in the net magnesium water are the properties of this water, probably its contact with minerals of earth where these springs exist. They make this water liquid. So it is medicinal, it is a remedy, so it's not water for everyday drinking only this water. Recommended amount of this water is 500 milliliters per day. And there is another water which is maybe used as both medicinal and normal drinking, table water, so to say. This is water from Slovenia, the country which is neighboring Slovakia. Sulinka water. It contains less bicarbonate, it contains less than magnesium, but you may drink much more water than that magnesium. So just pay attention to these two medicinal mineral water. Of course, the list of medicinal mineral waters is not exhausted with these waters. There are many other waters which contain excess of sulfates over bicarbonates and so on. But this is another story, the story about the mineral waters. To discuss it, we do not have too much time. I was telling you in this lecture that water is a fuel, and bicarbonate, which as a matter of fact, I would like to remind you, we produce in our body when we respire, when we inhale oxygen. This oxygen burns organic organic food in our body. The product is carbon dioxide, which is converted into bicarbonate, and bicarbonate is the catalyst of water burning. And we may now just to discuss a hypothetical case. If water can burn, can it be the primary fuel for bioenergy supply? This is just a fantastic question. As it may seem that it is a fantastic question, or even just foolish question. Can we substitute with a glass of water this so nicely looking organic food? There are many cases which were even documented that some people can stop eating and they do not die. Of course, it is not just fasting, artificial fasting for a very long period of time. People should get prepared to eat. But there are such people, they are called sun eaters, who practically do not eat any organic food, but they only drink water and breathe, and they're in a very good health. Those people who heard about them are always surprised and don't believe, because it is unbelievable. How can you live without food? And still these people exist, and this principle of water burning can explain their existence. Of course, it is not. It would not be a good idea tomorrow substitute all your food for only water. Those people who became sun eaters, they came to this state for very long period of time. It needs a lot of training. And as a biologist, I would like to show you some examples which are very biological phenomena, which are very difficult to explain without attraction the idea of water burning. Everybody knows about migrating birds, which can migrate thousands of kilometers. But there are such a unique bird, bar-tailed godwits, who spent half a year in New Zealand and half a year in Alaska, and half a year in Alaska. And they fly from New Zealand to Alaska, where it's winter, when summer comes to Alaska, making only one stop on their way in the Chinese Sea. And they get to Alaska. They give birth to their to their small birds in Alaska, and then they return back to New Zealand. So on their way, the way from Alaska to New Zealand takes 9 days of non-stop flight over the Pacific Ocean, and this is 11,000 kilometers. Of course, one cannot suggest that they can find and eat some mosquitoes over the Pacific Ocean, but they need a lot of energy for this non-stop 11,000 kilometer flight. What may be food for this flight? I suggest that this food primarily is water, because it's a lot of humidity, of course, over the ocean, and they are breathing and they are drinking. So this is not the final answer. This is a hypothesis. This is a question, but this question needs an experimental answer, and it shows some perspectives to further studies of the importance of water as the major substance which as Thales of Milet 2,500 years ago proclaimed, not only glues all the things, but also gives life to the universe. Now let's summarize what we were talking about. Summary of some unique properties of aqueous systems. Aqueous systems are capable of self-organization into holistic units. So one of the examples is that under the in the presence of infrared radiation, which is ubiquitous, water can self-organize into quasi-crystalline, quasi-polymeric, easy, like water, which has so many miraculous, unique properties. And it is a holistic unit. It is not a combination of water molecules. Aqueous systems extract low-density energy of warmth from their environment, and convert it into high-density free energy, which makes aqueous system a charged system. So if they are charged, they have intrinsic activity. And this intrinsic activity is the source of water own movement. I didn't have opportunity to tell you that water may flow not only under the action of external forces, external pushes or gravitational fields. Water may flow by itself because it is a charged system. As a matter of fact, the intrinsic property of water to move was one of the axioms proclaimed by Thales 2,500 years ago. The intrinsic activity of water, since they are charged system, allocate them with the capacity to receive resonant signals from the environment and react to them. I'll just told you a few words about the effect of solar and moon eclipses on the bicarbonate aqueous, activated bicarbonate aqueous solutions, which are completely shielded from the environmental light, from the environment, but they cannot be shielded from the variations of electromagnetic field. So, and they react to them. And also, aqueous system may serve the source of coherent photonic radiation, and we see that they radiate photons, and also phononic radiation. Phononic radiation, that is sound, and water also reacts to sound. So this list of properties of aqueous systems returns us back to the principles proclaimed by Thales 2,500 years ago. So properties of aqueous system are characteristic for living matter. And here on the background, you can see two living organisms which are practically completely consist of water. Hence, we can say that water is life's matter, mother and matrix, mother and medium. There is no life without water. This is the this statement proclaimed by the Nobel Prize winner Albert Szent-Györgyi more than 50 years ago. At that time, nobody knew about the separation of water into exclusion zone water and bulk water, about the charge separation of water and so on. But Albert Szent-Györgyi, he was a founder of biology and founder of bioenergetics and one of the leaders in biochemistry for many decades. His prophetic statement is now already gets support from many experimental experiments, results of many experiments performed in many laboratories in universities and research institutes. And I hope that many of you listeners of these lectures will be interested to discover more and more properties of water for the sake of the health, of good life, of the humanity as a living aqueous system. So thank you very much. Gracias, merci, and спасибо.
Okay, that was an interesting lecture. Well, maybe not so easy to understand from the first try with all those chemical formulas, etc. But well, in essence, well, understanding that we need to drink not some kind of pure H2O water, distilled water, but some specially bicarbonated water, so the water with some minerals, etc. So it should have some, cores around which it should be structurized. Then we understand that not all the waters are the same, and just the general understanding that we just need to drink a couple of liters a day is not simply just pure water, maximum filtered or reverse osmosis water. No, not that one. So a very interesting one, and thanks to Dr. Voeikov.